y'all can hear me, this is Michelle Lieber. Somebody has got the audio on, it's all static. I'm not sure if it's my phone or not.
The same for me.
It now went off. The static is gone. Maybe returning. It's definitely returning.
I cannot hear the presenters.
Same thing for me. I can't hear as well. It's all static.
Ms. Huggins, you may need to tell Trudy that she email.
Thank you, Mr. Grabowski.
Mr. Barrowe, Lieber, Dr. Temple, can you hear us better now?
Roger.
Roger. Thank you.
Good.
Okay, so I'm going to read back over what we're doing. We are covering action item.
You got to turn it off there.
Welcome. Good morning, everybody. Action item 2A, 2023-2028 Capital Building Program Phase 5 Sales Budget Reallocation. Ms. Shaw.
Yes, good morning, Chair Watley, Mr. Grabowski, and members. I will be presenting the Johns Island Elementary School reallocation. For this particular item, we have received additional requirements from the Department of Transportation for the roundabout, which is the main entrance to the school, and also the left turn, right turn, which is at the intersection of Brownswood and Rivers Road. And this particular additions included adding some additional curbing along the roundabout, as well as the left turn, right turn, and adding additional shouldering on both sides. And of course, this is all for the safety of our students and pedestrians transgressing the area. We also, in addition to those items, were required to relocate a sewage main, which is a critical part for the project. And speaking of being critical, these are critical times because we are projecting to open up the school in August of this year, which is right around the corner, right? And so with that being said, we had to add acceleration costs to make sure that we're able to open the school on time. And that will include any and everything related to the unsuitable soils that we have encountered with the project and that we will project to continue to encounter with the project, given the fact that we do live in a low country area. And also we are and have shifted to 7 days a week on site for this particular project. So we are budgeting those type of resources, and that's all included in this particular reallocation. That completes my update on this item, pending any questions that we may have.
I'll open the floor to discussion. Do you want to wait or do you want me to come back to you?
No. So on the sales tax referendum, we're digging deep into the contingency, but we're still, correct me if I'm wrong, it's still open for collection for another 2 years. The contingency is still going to be building, refreshing itself.
Yes, correct. We've collected 2 years of sales tax proceeds for the program, so we have another 4 years.
Okay. And maybe this is, for reconsideration, it sounds like a lot of this is DOT's responsibilities, even though we're paying for it. Is there going to be some continued discussion to recoup these potential expenditures?
Yes, I would love to have those discussions with SCDOT. There are some funds that I know that's out there. I think it's called C funding that we could look into to be able to recoup some of that. And so that is something that we're going to look into and see how that process goes for us, because these are off-site road improvements.
Thank you.
Do you mind if I add to that, Mr. Grabowski? So we've had very little luck in the past recouping cost. We're really at the whim of SCDOT approval. So if they approve changes that they believe are necessary based on our project, we can try, but I just being realistic, I believe we're going to absorb these costs.
Are you done?
Mhm.
Say your last name for me.
Worcester.
Worcester. I know I'm not going to say that right. Do you have anything?
No, I was just, so I would agree that it looks like.
Do you mind using the microphone so they can hear you online?
It looks like the contingency is going down, but I think Mr. Grabowski got that we're going to replenish it. So.
Mr. Garrett?
No questions.
The only thing that stood out to me is the issues that we're running into with this project being done on time. Is it strictly connected to the roundabout
and the road system. It's not the actual building and structure itself.
That's correct. It's not the building itself. So we were
Okay.
down to the roundabout and the left turn, right turn.
Okay.
Mhm.
That's all I have. Mr. Prentice, did you have anything?
No, ma'am.
All right, with that, we'll move forward to the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, it will move to the regular board meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. Next up is 3A, legislative update. With that, I will turn it over to Ms. Clara Heinzen.
Thank you, Ms. Watley. Ms. Heinzen works with the district on various affairs, part-time, both community engagement and legislative matters. She's going to update you today in regards to current pending legislative matters, specifically as they relate to fiscal impacts. Ms. Heinzen?
Yeah, do you want me to go back? Just do it from here? Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, Superintendent Huggins, and good morning, Chairman Watley, other board members and staff and community leaders. I just want to give you a brief update of some of the bills that are coming down. But prior to doing that, I just want to very quickly give you a little background for your information. Right now, we have 46 members in the Senate. Out of those, we have 34 Republicans and 12 Democrats. We only have 2 women in the Senate, one of which represents our district, Senator Bright Matthews. The House has 126 members, 34 Democrats, 88 Republicans. Currently, there are 2 vacancies. As you know, former board member Waters will be running in the general election in November. She has no opposition, so that will give us 21 women. We have 20 women. For your information, you might already know this, but this is important for you to know. House Ways and Means, we have 2 members of our delegation who are on Ways and Means, Representative Stavronakis from Charleston County and Representative Hewitt from Georgetown County, but they're both on our Charleston legislative delegation. We have 2 members on the House Education and Public Works Committee, Representative Hartnett and Representative Teeple, In the Senate Finance, we have Senator Sean Bennett from Dorchester, who happens to be the K-12 finance chairman from Dorchester, Senator Larry Grooms from Berkeley, Senator Ronnie Sapp, who is a new member of our delegation from Berkeley, and Senator Margie Bright Matthews from Collinton. We did have Senator Goldfinch, but he was redistricted. And we have a new senator, Senator Ed Sutton. We had a new district added. And we have only 2 members on the Education Committee, Saab and Grooms. I tell you this because it's real important for you to know who the leaders are in our delegation. Yes? Ms. Heinzen, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but myself and Mr. Grabowski were talking yesterday. Would it be possible, would you mind as liaison setting up maybe at some point after the budget a breakfast for us to get acquainted with our delegation?
To get a plan?
Acquainted.
Acquainted, of course,
Yeah,
yes.
we would like, there's a will of the board to build and
Okay.
establish a rapport.
Well,
Thank you.
I must say that I'm very pleased that we have a very cordial relationship with our legislative delegation. And I give a lot of credit to that to our superintendent, who
I agree.
on the bat, I brought in the chairman of the delegation, who happens to be a Republican, to meet with her, Representative Bustos, and I brought in Representative Stavronakis, who's a leader on the Democratic side, and we really have, I think, a very good bipartisan relationship. And I've always said that education should transcend politics.
Amen.
Children don't care if we have an R or a D after our name; they
That's
just
right.
want us to deliver. Okay, so I'll get into my PowerPoint. All right, first, these are some new bills that I wanted you to be familiar with. The first one is H 4254 by Representative Mitchell. And this simply says that you cannot have a school counselor or career specialist should only stay in that job. They cannot be transformed to work in an administrative task. So obviously that would have no fiscal impact. H 4257, Representative Johnson and others, this would allow school administrators to approve student absences required for participation in interscholastic activity approved for student participation by the school or the district. No fiscal impact. I know, Chairman Watley, you're very concerned about fiscal impacts, and I understand that.
Well, not just that, but also to bring more of, we are a donor county. They use us as a donor county for the rest of the state.
Absolutely.
So what we would like to push toward is to bring more of our money home.
I know. I know that's been very problematic.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry to interrupt, but please go ahead.
No problem. H 4263 by Representative Terrell and others. This would prohibit any public school from serving food containing various food dyes. I don't believe that's ever been a problem here, has it, Superintendent Huggins? But anyway, that obviously doesn't have any impact. All right, on this past Wednesday, I know you're very familiar with this bill. I'm sure you've read about it, H 3927. And this seeks to eliminate the use of diversity, equity, and inclusion policies by all of our state agencies and governments, including local school boards. I know, Superintendent Huggins, you had to deal with that recently. And this is ongoing. The Senate has not passed this yet, but it's an extremely controversial bill, as you well know, with a lot of implications. All right. Going on to number 5, H 4104. But, well, Chairman Bustos, he's no longer the chairman, but he was the chairman at the time this was introduced. And this would be a bill to abolish our constituent districts. I believe Superintendent Huggins, you said at our town hall that the House sponsored that would be a savings of about $500,000, correct? So that's a nice fiscal impact. That bill has passed the House. It passed last week, 108-0. Representative Hartnett, who's on the Education Committee, and Representative Bustos worked very hard on that, and Representative Stavronakis. It is now in the Senate, and I tried to, I just saw where he called me, but I didn't want to take the call. Senator Ed Sutton, I was asking him about where it is in the Senate. You have to have 3 readings for a bill. The first reading is when it's read across the desk. The second reading is approval, and third reading, then it's passed. The Senate right now is very tied down with the energy bill. And so I was hopeful we would get this taken care of this week, but it might be next week. But it's my understanding by talking to the members of the Senate that it is going to pass. All right, on number 6, 3862 by Chairman Erickson. She's chairman of the House Education and Public Works Committee, Smith and others. This would give a preference for charter schools for military personnel. And of course, as you know, we have a lot of military personnel in our area. This isn't anticipated to have any type of a fiscal impact. S425, Davis, Hembry, and others. This has to do with providing free lunches and free breakfasts and identifying those students who are able to have those meals. And I guess the physical impact on this would be according to the number of students that we currently are feeding. S269, Senator Turner. This bill would allow a district with at least 15,000 students, which would be us. You can hire private security services. Now, that would depend on, the fiscal impact on that would be dependent on what kind of security service you did hire. Have we ever thought about doing that, Superintendent Huggins?
I believe we
No, thank you. Mr. Reinbach's team leads that along with Mr. Broey in that shop. So
Are they considering this? You don't know.
Mr. Broy's online. We haven't made any considerations based on this bill. No, ma'am.
Okay. This just gives them permission. This is permissive. It gives them permission.
I do have a question about the lunch and breakfast whenever you get a moment.
You have a question about the lunch?
The bill for the lunch and breakfast whenever you get a moment.
Yeah, the end, I'll go back to that. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, S 416, this is Chairman Hembry. Hembry is the chairman of the Senate Education Committee in Alexander. This bill would prohibit a student from being on school property either during or after school hours if they've been expelled as a result of having a firearm on campus. And what this is just doing is this is just trying to make sure our schools are safe. And that would have no fiscal impact. Now, the next bill, number 10. This is a bill that is a top priority for the educational community. This is H 3196, the Educator Assistant Act. It was introduced by Chairman Erickson. It has passed the House, and the Senate is looking at it now. What this bill would allow that, first of all, it would say that if under existing law, districts are required to issue contracts by May the 1st. If a district fails to do so, the law requires a district to employ the teacher that failed to receive a contract for the coming year. And it also, believe it or not, in the House, it was going to fine a school district $100,000 for every contract they failed to issue by May 1st. Fortunately, the Senate is opposed to this, and they wanted to remove this. This is the discussion on this. Another part of this, you would no longer have to, every 5 years, renew your certificate through the state. That could be done through doing work in the district, school, professional development. And so this is being looked at, but I know the education community is very much in favor of this. Chairman Erickson is trying to do everything she can. She's very supportive of teachers. She's trying to make it easier for teachers. All right, then is that it? Oh, we got Senate Education Subcommittee. The Charter School Accountability Act, that was introduced by Senator Hembry, Education Chairman of the Senate. That just puts more accountability for charter schools. They want to know more what the charter schools are doing. There is a subcommittee coming up this week, 3431, and let me get that. 3431 is by Representative Newton. And just 1 minute, please. I got it. This bill requires establishment for social media companies with regard to South Carolina minor accounts. And the Attorney General's office is going to investigate and enforce requirements. As you know, there's been an awful lot of information and a lot of concern about social media with students. And this will have a fiscal impact for the Department of Education, about $500,000 per year. They're going to need to operate this for curriculum development. And then lastly, the other bill is 288 by Sean Bennett. Remember, I said earlier that Mr. Bennett went to Starling High School. He lives in Somerville. There's just FYI, there's a lot of talk that he might be running for governor. All right, and that bill has to do with social media as well. And the other thing I just wanted to bring to your attention is I watched the Zoom meeting. I watch a lot of Zoom meetings, prevents me from having to go to Columbia. And last week, the Senate Finance had Frank Rainwater, who is, Mr. Prentice knows, is the financial guru for the state. He's the executive director of the South Carolina Department of Revenue and Fiscal Affairs. And he said that right now we are in our finances, we have $660 million in recurring dollars, $1.25 billion in non-recurring, and a $313 million surplus. But he feels like that things are evening out now. I guess that's what you hear too, Mr. Prentice, The big concern right now when people are working on the budget is the fact that they don't know what's going to come down from Washington. There've been a lot of cuts. There are more cuts to come. And so there's some concern. I mean, some of these departments, state departments, get a major portion of their funding from from the federal government. The last thing I'd say before I answer.
On that note, how much do we send to the federal government?
To South Carolina?
How much does South Carolina send to the federal government?
I don't
Because
know,
if they
but
cut us, we can cut them too, right?
Well,
our
I
money
don't think
here at
I
home.
don't, Chairman Watley, I don't think I'll be the one that suggests that. I might be kicked out of the State House. But I do want to say in closing, before I answer your question, I know a lot of the board members have done so, but I do encourage you to get to know your local representatives, particularly the person who represents you in the Senate and the person who represents you in the House. And like I said, I'm very pleased with the relationship that we've already established. It's the best relationship I have seen in my tenure here in the district. And I want to continue that. And please, I'm going to give you my personal card with my number on it and my email. Please call me if I can be of any service to you, if you need any questions about bills. And we will work on, we did have, I thought, a very productive breakfast in the fall, but we will work on doing something else. Okay, and what is your question?
Well, I'll just start where you just left off, but I want to go back to a couple of the bills. I know that there's a very strong will of the board to want to establish a relationship, and the breakfast that the superintendent holds is separate. That's a breakfast that she hosts, and sometimes we're not invited to it. So
Okay, so we'll
there's
do a separate event. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Please, if you don't mind. I know many of the board members have expressed a desire to be able to build a collaborative effort and
Sure.
communication.
All
I
right.
think that's the thing, so that we will know what's going on in the State House and how to do our jobs better and perhaps speak to them about our needs and what we would like to see happen. The other thing is the bill for the breakfast. So let me back up a little bit. On a lot of these bills, you read and kind of basically told us what they were about, but what are their standings? Do they have any traction? Are they going to go anywhere? Just kind of a basic idea, but maybe it might be too much to go into the weeds on, but maybe if you could just highlight the ones that you feel are moving along.
Yeah. Well, I think the Teacher Education Act, System Act will go, because I know the teacher groups, the South Carolina Education Association and the Palmetto State Teacher Association, the teachers are really advocating for that. I think the charter schools will pass. I think there's a lot of concern about the increasing number of charter schools. They want to make sure that there's a lot of accountability. I know we read a lot about that. There was so much read recently about Oceanside, if you recall all that. So I think that will go. Hopefully our local bill will pass, and I think it will. I was so pleased we had no opposition at all in the in the House. I thought that was wonderful. This diversity it has really one of the House members stood up 2 weeks ago and said, this bill is going to divide friendships in this body. It's gotten to be very heated discussion. I'm not quite sure that's going to pass. And I think the safety ones about social media, I think that's a huge concern with people now, with parents, educators, and legislators. I think that will pass. But, I can come back at the end of the session. The legislature is moving very rapidly this year. I've never seen it move quite like this. And they're supposed to have the budget completed by the middle of May. Oh, and the other thing, I'm so sorry, this is one thing I didn't include on my slide, but S62, which is the voucher bill. If you recall, the bill passed last year, and then the Supreme Court ruled it illegal. We have a different Supreme Court now.
South Carolina Supreme Court.
South Carolina Supreme Court. I mean, we have some of the same members, but I know Chief Justice Beatty, who ruled against it, he is now retired. We have a new Chief Justice. We also finally have a woman back. We have Judge Verdon, who's a distant cousin of Senator Verdon. And so we don't know what's going to happen. But basically, the Senate was on the fast track with this bill. They started holding hearings on this in December, which is pretty unusual because the session doesn't start, until July. And they passed it. And what they were doing is they were taking the money out of the lottery because they said those were not public funds. And then the House completely, they did a strike of the whole bill, inserted, and they're putting it back in the general fund. So the Senate, what happened was the Senate passed the bill, sent it over to the House. The House did not keep anything in the bill, a few things, but not a lot. And then they sent it back to the Senate, and the Senate did not agree with it. So now there's an impasse, which means there's going to be a conference committee. When you have a conference committee, you have 3 members from each side of the body. You have the Senate, the education chairman gets to choose someone, the president of the majority leader in the House, in the Senate, and then the minority leaders. So we'll see what happens with that. But they're running out of time. But I'll be happy to come back, and please call me with any concerns. Okay?
I will. And the breakfast and lunch bill, will the state be assisting us with some of the funds for that?
Yeah. The State Department
Okay.
sends them funds. And I think it's wonderful. I just read the other day, Superintendent Huggins, that you're offering food over the summer. And I think that's wonderful.
And I know that Ms. Jewett is eager to speak with you. Would you mind giving her your card when you're done so that she can speak in more depth?
Who is that?
She's a board member, but I don't want to break protocol. So if you don't mind.
Oh, you want me to call her?
Just give her your card so she can
Okay.
speak with you privately.
Okay. But thank you so much, Chairman Watley.
You're welcome. Mr. Grabowski?
No question.
Thank you
Thank
very
you very
much.
much for the update.
Pardon me?
Thank you for the update.
Oh, glad to be here.
Mr. Garrett?
No questions.
And Mr. Duke?
No questions.
Okay. Ms. Huggins, did you have anything to add?
No, ma'am, we appreciate you being here, Ms. Heinzen, and your support. Ms. Jewett, for the record, is back here before you leave if you want to give her your card.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
I'm sorry, but we do not take questions during a committee meeting, but I will make sure that Ms. Heinzen gets your information, or I'll get her card for you guys and give it to you. Mr. Prentice, do you have anything?
No, ma'am.
All right, Ms. Heinzen, thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you very much.
I'll just ask the committee, does the committee have any problem with entertaining questions from board members of Ms. Heinzen? Okay, Ms. Jewett, do you want to go ahead and ask a question? Oh, do you mind using the microphone?
I just wanted to see if there's any possibility that we can get more on-time information. So as these things transition and get more intense, we need to know more readily, as opposed to just in a board meeting, maybe 2 months or a month after things have happened.
We'll work on that, Ms. Jewett, and I'll make sure I work with Ms. Heinzen.
Specifically vouchers, I think that would be a huge
Absolutely.
hit to us on top of federal funding.
I can include a regular point in the board brief. So Ms. Heinzen and I'll work on that.
Thank you.
We'll work on that, Claire.
I think that was Ms. Lieber. Ms. Lieber?
Yes.
And I think Dr. Temple was trying to also flag, but Ms. Lieber, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Chairwoman, and thank you, Ms. Holst. I'm going to pronounce your name wrong. I can't believe it, so I'm going to call you Ms. Clara. So one of the things that concerned me, I guess, maybe 2 years ago is, and then this Superintendent Anita would have to validate, but we had made a request to the legislative body about reviewing the DMV license, CDL license for bus drivers so that we wouldn't be competing with the truck driving industry. Is there a follow-up on that? And before you answer that question, do we have a list of things that CCSD has also requested? And are we tracking those?
Thank you for that question, Ms. Lieber. It's Anita. I'd ask Mr. Baroe to, if he's able to come off mute and share the request and the reason for the request in regards to bus drivers specifically, and I'll be happy to provide to the Audit and Finance and to the board the last slides that included specific request to the delegation, our local delegation. Mr. Baroe, are you available to speak to the DMV question?
Yes, ma'am. I can just provide a quick overview or background on what's transpired over the past couple of years. We've worked with our transportation counterparts to try to garner support for a federal motor carrier safety admin waiver that allows our bus drivers to receive their CDL that's specifically designated for school buses. What it eliminates is an under the hood inspection, which the state does not allow us to do on state buses anyways. And in our contract with First Student and Coastal, we do not allow drivers under the hood. They just do an under the bus check ahead of time. Not having that waiver results in an increased training requirement, longer training times, which can result in more fallout of potential bus drivers. It also makes the bus drivers much more competitive to get their full CDL and then take off and go work somewhere else. So we have provided information to SCASA to let them know that we were interested if there was support for this, but I've not seen any significant progress at this point to push ahead with that. And what that would require is the DMV, indeed, to Mrs. Lieber's point, would have to set up a different licensing protocol that they do not have, and they have not been willing to move toward that without legislative direction.
Ms. Heinzen, did you want to add anything?
Well, this is the first time I've heard of this, but I'll be happy if I will get with the superintendent and I'll be happy to approach members we could get this introduced.
This has been a major issue for our more outlying, as Charleston grows and our infrastructure doesn't develop with it. This has been a major issue for our outlying children. Dr. Temple, are you still with us? No? Okay.
I do want to add, Miss Clara, is that I have actually reached out to Representative Erickson suggesting this, but I just don't understand what why it doesn't getting any traction. That'd be awesome.
You broke up there a bit, Ms. Lieber.
She's asking about the traction. Why isn't anything being done about it? Why isn't it going anywhere?
Well, I was just telling you that I tried to also help when I was had a discussion with Representative Erickson in passing, and I just don't understand. Maybe anybody that runs into any education committee can continue to advocate for this, because I don't understand why it's been a CCSD request for over 2 years without any traction.
Thanks for that, Ms. Lieber.
Ms. McKinney, I'll offer you the opportunity as well. Did you have anything?
So my only question for the legislature is, last year they helped give us backbone by making it a budget proviso not to have cell phones. I don't see any district backing away from that, but are they doing it as a budget proviso again this year?
I don't know yet, but I will certainly find out, Ms. McKinney. But I will say this, I've heard very positive remarks about how the various districts in the state are very happy they did this. And I think I personally, as a former teacher, I think it's a very good idea.
Based on what we know, Mrs. McKinney, at this time, there are no changes to that for the new year. So we'll have Ms. Heinzen keep her eye on it for us. Thank you.
I do have one clarification question, and Ms. Hanson, probably you can help me out on this because you've been following it. This voucher issue as to the physical impact, potential physical impact, and Daniel, Mr. Prentice, you may want to weigh in on it too. Based upon what I've read and what I've heard, so many of these vouchers are issued to students that are already in private schools. It's not like they're moving them from what the pure intent is. So I'm trying to figure out how this is truly affecting, the district as this thing moves through. Because it seems like they're pushing the limit higher and higher as to who qualifies.
Yes, the House took away at the final year that you don't have to have any financial requirement. The Senate did not have that. Superintendent Weaver put, I think it was 30 million in her budget that she asked for this, and the House has put that in. Of course, we don't know what the Senate has done, but I think it's interesting that they have not had that conference committee.
Because, it was one thing when they were taking out the lottery funds, but when they put it back into the general fund, that's when it starts to get interesting.
Well,
but I'm glad for your update because it was.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you at the meeting that I watched via Zoom last week, Mr. Rainwater talked about how the funds in the lottery are going down. So there's some concern about that.
Thank you.
What do you think, Mr. Prentice?
We've watched the income requirement piece of it, and it's kind of, I think, scaled over 5 years, the way it was originally written. And then, of course, on our side, the trade-off is if we saw a decline in enrollment, our state funding could decrease accordingly. But, I do think that, the folks that are currently enrolling in private schools, receiving those funds would be of only impact to the state. Of course, there's the opportunity cost there of any appropriations they make that aren't to, the greater K-12 formula that we wouldn't receive that are now being diverted to vouchers in the general fund of the state. But overall, $30 million in appropriations not really going to move the needle for us anyways. So no impact foreseen in the immediate future, but we're just continuing to watch it.
Anything else? Oh, Dr. Temple.
Oh, yes, thank you very much. Appreciate the discussion. I listened to the voucher bill as well, and it looks like it has not had a big impact on Charleston, but it also isn't serving the rural communities very well either. Look forward to the breakfast. Thank you.
There's a very strong sentiment from the board to establish some rapport.
Chairman Watley,
Yes, ma'am.
to piggyback on what what board member Temple said, that's been a major concern. I've talked to legislators in the rural areas, and they feel like that there's nowhere else for their students to go. And there's not, and that's kind of disappointing. The other thing that a lot of people are concerned about is the teacher quality. We know that once we get a child in the classroom, that teacher quality has the greatest impact on that achievement. And there's some concern about schools just coming up and not having qualified teachers. So there's a lot of movement out there against it. So we'll see.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Heinzen. And I guess just let us know when you're able to communicate with to bring us all together.
We'll work on that, Ms. Watley. We tend to try to offer that when the delegation is out of session because we get better attendance for that. But we'll work on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Heinzen.
Okay, we'll move along to item 3B, which is the purchase and contracts greater than $250. With that, Mr. Prentice.
So look to your screen or look above you at the screen. We have converted to a dashboard, and so it's now on the public transparency page of the website. So this is something that's been in development for the past several months since we changed the format of this as an information report. So the information is now feeding from our accounting system as these procurements are made on a monthly basis into this dashboard, and it'll stack the data historically each month. So there's 5 tabs here. The first is the procurements over 250 by fund. The second tab is the procurements over 250,000 by department in terms of where they landed from the department procuring the services. Bless you. The third is by vendor. And so you can click into all of these and drill down into the particulars. And then lastly is by the type of procurement, whether it was an existing CCSD contract, a cooperative, a solicitation, et cetera. And so compiling that all by dollar value. And then the final is probably the most familiar, which is the data feed, which looks very similar to the report that's been presented in PDF format in prior months, which shows the beginning and end date, the purchase order number, the description that was entered in, the means of procurement and the dollar amount, and who the vendor was and how we went about procuring it. So if you scroll down to the bottom, for this particular month cycle, there were 3 new competitive procurements, and there's a reflection of the number of days the solicitation was advertised and the number of responses received. And then in the item itself is the statement that General Counsel, the CFO, and the Director of Procurement Services have all reviewed and concurred on the contracts being in compliance with the code. So this will be the new method of presentation of this information, and it's now available to the public on that transparency page, as I mentioned.
I'll open it up for questions. Mr. Grabowski?
I've thoroughly enjoyed this since you showed it to me. So I have no questions at this moment.
Thank you, sir.
I commend you. It's very easy to use. All the information's there.
A lot of credit to our smart folks in business intelligence that have put some of this together and figured out how to customize and automate everything to make it easy for us to present.
You know, I know it's not Brewster.
Worcester.
Worcester. Okay. It's going to take me a minute.
No worries. I just, as someone works in procurement, I just want to say this is very, very transparent. I like it. I played around with it. Very good job. So,
Garrett?
No question.
Mr. Duke?
I'm impressed. I do like the way I deal with Power BI almost on a daily basis. So, the way that he presented his information is very transparent and easy to use.
Yeah, I concur. Yeah.
Thank you.
A lot of really good changes and streamlining things. I like it very much.
We're looking to continue to add on that page the Power BI dashboard. So trying to take one at a time and figure out what information the public may be interested in to try to show various different elements of financial transparency. We're going to continue to add to that.
Well, even with the graph that you did showing the expenditures and the projections, and very good. Yeah. Moving on, item 3C, the monthly financial report 2025. Mr. Prentice?
Yes, ma'am. So we have the monthly financial report for the month ended February of 2025. So I have to add the disclaimer at this point in time that we are using information that we've gathered from assessment data from the county, from our own internal projections, and the budget presentation that you'll see later this morning, which is much more up to date than this report, because this, of course, is only through the end of February. So I just add that caveat that this is kind of a snapshot, whereas what we're going to share in the budget presentation is our refined estimate. But at the time of this report, we were projecting a positive variance in revenues over the budget of approximately $10.6 million and an underrun of expenditures predominantly between salaries and benefits of about $8.6 million, which reduces our use of budgeted fund balance by about $19.3 million over the budget for fiscal year 25. We're seeing that continue to improve in the final estimates that we'll share later in the budget presentation. And then also included in this item is the WSF report for the month of February. And so nothing in particular to share there other than just the final year-to-date expended amount is $17.9 million, $15.1 million remaining. And as we've mentioned in the past, this is predominantly salaries, and we don't encumber the salaries on this report, but we're projecting approximately $3 million in savings expenditure underrun at the end of the year at this point.
Mr. Grabowski?
No questions.
No questions.
Mr. Garrett? Mr. Duke?
No questions.
All right, thank you. monthly capital projects report. Ms. Costello.
Thank you. And good morning, Committee Chair Watley, Vice Chair, Mr. Grabowski, Superintendent Huggins, and committee members. I'd like to present the February 2025 Capital Projects Report. Our revenue collections for the 2023 through 2028 Sales Tax Capital Program were $251,000 above our 2% projected growth. Our expenditures for the programs are as follows. For the 2010 through 2016 program, $33,000. The 2017 through 2022 program, $668,000. The 2023 through 2028 program, $9.3 million. The 2023 through 2028 program funded with long-term debt is $3.5 million. The fixed cost of ownership fiscal year 24 program is in the final stages of closeout. The fixed cost of ownership fiscal year 25 program is in the final stages of completion. And the fixed cost of ownership fiscal year 26 program was board approved on March 24th and ready to commence. This program will run from March of 2025 through June of 2026. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Costello. Mr. Grabowski, do you have anything?
No questions.
Mr. Worcester?
No questions.
Mr. Garrett?
No questions. I asked all my questions yesterday.
Mr. Duke?
No questions.
Sorry, something just popped up on my computer. I'm like, I hit something. I don't know what I did. Thank you, Ms. Costello. And then we will move on to the FY 2026 budget update. Mr. Prentice.
Yes, ma'am. So we have an update presentation for the FY26 budget. I'll say that my attempt to provide the information here was not to duplicate what we've shared in the past, but rather to provide updates at this point in the process and things that have changed since we last shared the information in March. I do believe that we are on track to recommend first reading to the board in April, and that may require, so I'm kind of starting from the back here, calling a special called audit and finance meeting later this month once we have the first reading book prepared to be able to refer the budget to the board for first reading in order to maintain that calendar. So I wanted to provide these updates today, and then we can follow up on that as we finalize the budget book for first reading. So if you go to the second slide, and if I don't know if there's a way to full screen that possibly in the settings. Might make the charts easier to see.
While we're waiting on this, I see Kaleidoscope program. I had somebody recently mention to me about a grant for, let's see, it's 21st Century, and it could provide after school. You're familiar with this? Okay.
We do receive those funds.
Okay.
And it is a good program. There are some restrictions in terms of how we can administer the program that can to make it problematic. And I don't know if Mr. Broey wants to share some context on that with his conversations with Ms. Barnett related to our thought process going forward while we're working on putting the presentation up.
So I can certainly add to that very briefly. We have indeed received 21st grant funds. As Mr. Prentice mentions, there are some significant restrictions with that fund, including the time frame that we can offer services. And so we are looking at an alternative in which ABC vouchers are used. We've had a successful implementation of that where even more children get service, and in many cases free. So we are taking a hard look at that 21st Century grant and indeed moving away from it when the time comes to renew it. We'll look at each one individually to see what makes the most financial sense, and more importantly, what makes the most sense to get more kids in the program.
Thank you, Mr. Broey.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you for entertaining that.
Absolutely. That was, I think that's a couple slides up. So we do want to share an update on Kaleidoscope. And I think we had advanced the slides when we were trying to get it full screen. So just generally the agenda for today, to go over the FY26 revenue and expenditure updates to projections, talk about some changes in funding and additional considerations, and really just share the balanced budget picture with the committee that will be reflected in the first reading book that's available later this month. So if you can go to the next slide. So looking at our FY25 budget to our FY26 proposed budget comparatively, you can see on the top is our revenues and the bottom is our expenditures. Seeing a nice increase in our local sources. We've partnered very closely with Charleston County to understand the movement in new construction, transfers of real estate, vehicle growth, economic development with our fee in lieu of tax to be able to fine tune those projections. This year, as I mentioned in the budget report, we are seeing some positive variances over the budget. So the percentage difference from actual to FY26 budget will not be as significant due to some increased collections. I'll say that, we had projected in the budget to be about 1.8% over in FY25, and we're within 0.1% of that in terms of our actuals that we've seen post for the year. We're very close to finalizing the final collection posting for property taxes for the fiscal year. The other area is our state funding. We're seeing growth related to both the budget in terms of additional recurring funds. We can go back. There we go. Additional recurring funds from the state as well as increases to our enrollment. So we've trued those up. It's about a $20.4 million increase for FY26. In the federal area, not a major increase financially there to the overall budget picture, but we have seen an increase in our impact aid, which is the offset funding that we receive for students that are enrolled that live in military housing and don't provide any compensation through property tax to CCSD. And then, as I've indicated, our use of fund balance is decreasing significantly, which is in alignment with our projections for FY26. If you go back to last year's projections, looking at where we were projecting to be, that number is right in line with where we were projecting our use of fund balance. For the new members to the committee, I'll just indicate that our fund balance had been traditionally much higher over the last 10 years than our policy requirement. Our policy is 16.6% of the budget, which is double the State Department of Education requirement under the law. And our actual fund balance had been double our local requirement. So we were trying to thoughtfully expend some of that fund balance sustainably as we implemented some of these post-ESSER programs and saw increases in property tax to catch up with the overall fiscal plan. And so that is exactly what's happening. The use of fund balance in FY25 allowed us to just kind of step off that ESSER cliff flat and implement some of the weighted student funding and the salary increases to keep our compensation strategy in place. And then that fund balance utilization will continue to decrease over time as we line up to our policy requirement and don't exceed our policy requirement locally in terms of our available fund balance and the general operating fund. On the expenditure side, everything that we've talked about so far to date, personnel and benefits going to maintain 100% of market. For classified staff, the $4,000 increase across every cell for teachers, as well as banding cells 0 through 5 to provide that minimum teacher pay of $64,782 for somebody coming in between the 0 and the 5th year. On the operating side, contract increases predominantly. We've seen a slight decrease in our transfers related to the sunset of ESSER in terms of where the transfer flow is happening. That is predominantly our weighted student funding transfer out to the weighted student funding operating fund that we set up in terms of the transfers out now. Charter schools, we're seeing an increase based on the FY25 projected year-end revenues and the formula that's mandated by the state. So all in about $57.1 million and an increase in expenditures for FY26, which is lined up with our projections very close to what we were anticipating at this point last year. You go on to the next slide. So I just want to talk about a few general considerations that are different from the last budget presentation, just to provide some context in terms of where we're going in this budget before the first reading book is provided. This Kaleidoscope program does not impact the general operating fund, but the Kaleidoscope program would rely upon a transfer in from the general operating fund in the event that the revenues were not sufficient to support the expenditures for all of the program locations. So I wanted to make sure that we shared this information because what we're proposing would rely upon revenues and some small use of fund balance in the Kaleidoscope fund, but eventually we may require some general operating fund support as we go down the road. But what we're proposing to do is reduce the cost of Kaleidoscope for CCSD staff. Right now, it's 80% of the full cost, and we're proposing to reduce it to 50% of the full cost. So a CCSD staff member would see a 50% reduction. We see a lot of pressure there from our peers within the local market in terms of the discounts that they provide for kaleidoscope programs or extended day programs. And so it was one of our strategies this fiscal year to see if we could implement a reduction in the fees. And so that's a total cost of $585,000 via reduced revenue from CCSD employees that send their children into these programs, but no impact to the general operating fund. And we were able to balance that fund for FY26 without using any fund balance.
You got me totally confused on that, on how the revenue impact. Can you go over that again in
Sure.
third grade level?
So the Kaleidoscope Fund Expanded Learning operates outside of the GOF as a special revenue fund. And so the revenues are comprised of the 21st Century Learning grants and direct pay from parents that are enrolling their students in the program. And then the expenditures are all of the operating costs for administering the sites, predominantly personnel costs for those folks that support the program, and as well as the site managers at all the locations. And so by reducing the tuition for a CCSD employee down to 50%, we'll see a slight decrease in revenue over what we've seen in the past. But we have been operating that fund at a positive variance essentially at the end of the year. So we're able to still balance by implementing that reduction to 50%. We had looked, Mr. Broey and his team had put together several scenarios because we're currently, as I mentioned, at 80% for CCSD employees. We had looked at 50% and things even lower than that. And the 50% was the most fiscally sustainable option to implement that would provide some relief for CCSD employees.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So going to the next slide. Some funding updates just across the general operating fund. This is some good news that we don't normally get, but we have been working hard to review our property insurance and casualty insurance programs to make sure that we're refining those as much as possible. So we're seeing all in about a $1.8 million decrease in premiums for FY26, which is a trend that we haven't seen in the last several years. And that is broken down between about a 12% general decrease in premiums based on the overall brokering of our policies for the upcoming year. And then we also adjusted values, insured values, which equated to about a $488,000 decrease. We went through and looked at all of our legacy facilities that we're not currently operating as traditional schools. They may be support centers, they may be mothballed. And if there was an impairment to that facility, would we really want to receive replacement cost, or would we just want to be able to receive compensation to demolish and remove rubble? And so by reducing the values at those facilities, that reduced the premiums by about $488,000. On top of that, though, we've added the excess liability coverage that we've been discussing to $5 million. And so that brought the premium back up. So the net decrease in premium for fiscal 26 is a reduction of about $1.2 million overall. So that allows us to implement that excess liability and still see a decrease between year over year. If you remember last year, the increase for FY25 was 1.9 million increase. So being able to recoup some of that and get that brought back down through some of the strategies implemented this year has been very helpful to balancing the budget.
So weighing last year and this year, we're ahead essentially about a $500,000.
So we saw this 1.9 million increase this year. We're 1.8 organically down for FY26, but we're picking up that excess liability piece, so that the net decrease is 1.2. So still
Right,
a
but
little.
last year it was 1.9.
That was the increase.
Right.
Mhm.
So we increased last year, decreased
This year, yes, ma'am.
So we are net positive about $500,000.
So no, so all in all, we are within about 700,000 of where we were in FY24. So we're if you look at the difference between what we increased this year and what we're proposing to decrease for FY26, we'll be about 700,000 the FY24 amount.
Over,
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
I mistake. I thought you, okay, got it.
And our policies run from May to May, so there's some offsets and accruals there in terms of how that works with the renewal process, the way we're insured. But that's the overall composite for the fiscal year.
I know that you're projecting normally out a little bit further. Have you looked at that a little bit further? Will we?
So I have shown increases in fiscal 27 out through the 5-year forecast based on just the general unknowns of the market, but also knowing that we're increasing our insured values by building new construction. So traditionally, we've seen our insured values increase. Last year, we were up to about 2.9 billion in insured assets. And so as a result of that reduction that resulted in the $488,000 decrease, we dropped the values by about 80 million. But going forward, we'll continue to see an increase as a result of putting new construction on the books. So when Johnstown Elementary, for example, comes online, I think that'll be about a $52 million facility by way of insured value being placed in service that'll increase the total insured. And so that'll result in some premium increase over time, as an example. So just general good news to share there. That's included in the overall budget picture for the fiscal year. On the next slide, we have refined our charter and partnership school payments for FY26. So that increase year over year is about $8.2 million. So we're seeing about a 10% increase in charter and partnership school payments, which is something that is driven by contract or by state law, and why I continue to emphasize the importance of reviewing applications by charter schools, because as their enrollment increases and that formula with the multiplication factors for student per pupil weights are applied, it can be very costly to the district. And we'll be providing an update on charters in general at the Cal meeting next Monday to go into this a lot deeper. But 8.2 million in additional funding is included in the budget based on those formulas for FY26. Go to the next slide. So I wanted to provide a general update on weighted student funding. We are where we projected to be in terms of WSF being just over $36 million for FY26, using 10 million of the ESSER sustainability funds as we had projected, and then reappropriating $3 million in projected savings for FY26. And so that continues to advance using the new per pupil formula. But the piece that I wanted to share, if you go to the next slide, is the breakdown like we've shown in the past that looks at the non-unique and unique pupil units. So on this slide, you see the number of pupils in poverty, multilingual learners, and students with disabilities. But these are double and triple counted in certain circumstances, because you may have a student with disabilities that's also a multilingual learner, and in certain cases, they fit all three categories. And then the weights that are applied based on each of those pupils at the school level and how much funding is received per pupil within those categories. So if somebody meets all three categories, they could get potentially all three weights multiplied by those respective amounts per pupil. And on the next slide, we break down the categories. So there's 422 unique pupils, for example, that fit all three buckets. There's 87 pupils that are multilingual and also a student with disabilities. And so in terms of pupils served, we're at 25,562, which is roughly 1,000 increase over the FY25 amount in terms of students that fit into those categories based on our projections at that point in time. This is all using the 45-day average daily membership from the current school year is how we set that up for budgeting purposes. Go on to the next slide. And then the last piece of this really kind of turns it over to the consideration of the board. But there's three considerations that we wanted to bring up for consideration in the FY26 budget, one of which is board pay. And we've done some research on that at the request of the board. And so I wanted to indicate that we've put some funding in the budget for the board to consider this if it's the will of the board this fiscal year, but that would require a separate policy amendment to implement. So while we can include funding in the budget, ultimately the board also has to give two readings to the respective policy in order to be able to amend board pay. So we're currently at $9,600 for regular board members and $10,800 for the chair. We've included research from the South Carolina School Boards Association at that highlighted link that shows that CCSD does lag in board pay compared to peers of similar size, particularly looking at Horry and Greenville counties. So that information is there for consideration in order to promote a discussion and see if we can make a determination on whether or not the board wishes to make any changes to that for FY26. As a continuation, and then I guess we can kind of open it up for discussion because this is the end of the presentation. The additional considerations are potentially a legislative liaison. Is it the will or desire of the board to consider someone to liaise on the board's behalf with our state delegation, and is any stipend desired for that work. And then lastly, travel stipends. Right now, the board by each member receives $1,666 a year for travel. And is there any will of the board to change that amount or the structure of how those dollars flow for board members to be able to attend professional development and training, and particularly School Boards Association conferences and such? And should it be adjusted annually? So those are just three considerations outside kind of the general purview of staff that we've considered in the budget for FY26, albeit not a material or significant amount of funding in the grand scheme of things, but something the board would have to do. So that is the end of the presentation. The last slide is just the calendar of next steps. And as I mentioned, we probably are going to need to have a special called meeting before first reading on April 28th. If that's the plan that we go with in terms of getting first reading done in April, we'll have another Audit and Finance Committee meeting. Actually, this is now changed to 5/7 based on the new schedule. And then we'll have another budget workshop at Committee of the Whole in May, with second reading and public hearing in May 19th to implement the FY26 budget if everything goes to plan. So happy to answer any questions and appreciate the consideration.
Okay, so we're looking at special call audit and finance on the 23rd.
That was our proposal, but just generally later that week, Wednesday or later that particular week, in order to give the committee the books and then to be able to get the recommended budget to the board several days in advance.
We can go ahead
first reading.
and I would prefer to go ahead and get it on the schedule if you think that we'll be ready in time.
We'll be ready.
So same time, 8 a.m. on the 23rd?
So the only thing I will say about that day in particular is we do have a community engagement with the superintendent, one of the coffee chats.
That we rescheduled from this morning.
So that would force another reschedule.
Not that I don't necessarily need to attend, though. I certainly trust.
I would prefer for you to be here. That's what we're just, yeah, but so how about the committee? How do you feel about that Thursday, the 24th at 8 a.m.? So that the superintendent can engage with the community.
We've got a lot of special called meetings that week. Is there a way that we can, because I know we have the teacher's contract has to be, that meeting has to happen.
Can we do that right after the?
No, I'm not going to do that. We put that at 4:30 for a lot of reasons. So, and it that one should be a very quick meeting.
21st, okay.
It's required. So are we pushing it? I mean, can we push it and combine the two?
It would have to be called separately.
I'm sorry, I can't do audit and finance in the afternoon.
But what I'm trying to figure out is if we call the special called meeting for this teacher's contract first on the 23rd at 8 a.m., that should be all of what, 10 minutes?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I see what you're saying.
Well, that's what I was suggesting. Okay.
Right?
Yes.
So I know I sent out a notification to all the board, and that can be attended by Zoom. But my recommendation is if it's not going to, rather than have 2 days of special called meetings, I'd rather
We
have.
certainly are open to that. Yes, sir. If you wanted
Right.
to call one at 8 and one at 8:30.
Right. That's what
And I could zoom in, Mrs. Watley, from North Charleston before the 9 a.m. coffee with the superintendent. If on the 23rd, if that's what you.
Unless the chair would agree to do the 24th rather
We could
than
do the 24th at 8
a.m. I'm more concerned with the teachers' contracts and making sure that because I know we're pushing it kind of late.
We don't want to push it too late because it takes
Yeah.
some time to get all that done. Either one is, I'm going to be on a bus lot on the 24th. My calendar is a nightmare, for the record. So you don't have to plan around me. I'll find a way to be present at least for a portion of the meeting.
I mean, the 23rd or 24th, I don't care.
23rd 's
I'm
fine.
just more worried
We'll
about.
work on that, Ms. Wally.
I was thinking
I
about the
appreciate it.
superintendent.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
We'll work on it in dialogue with you, Ms. Watley.
Either date, it's
We'll-
fine.
we'll
It's
have-
just we need
yeah.
to get it out to the board, and I would rather have it.
I have to
bang,
block it
bang.
off. Okay. You can or you can't?
I cannot, but yeah.
What about the 24th?
Yes.
Okay.
And we'll push for the 24th.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett.
Yep. We'll get the special called board meeting for contract approval to begin first, and then audit and finance to begin immediately following the adjournment of that meeting.
Thank you for working. Thank you
Absolutely.
for working with me on that.
And we'll have the books to be able to hand out to the committee, and then it'll immediately go to the board. So that would leave the board with the end of the week and all through the weekend to review that information before first reading on Monday. All right. I appreciate that consideration. That's not normally a step that we take, but getting the book prepared for today would have been impossible based on the deadlines that we have in the budget calendar for final reconciliation of our contract review system and some of those types of things that finalize numbers. And so we could have had it in early May like we normally do, but that would have required pushing everything out to June. So that helps us out just one extra special called meeting, and we can have essentially 40 days of implementation time for the budget, which we've talked at the staff level about, giving staff the opportunity to enter requisitions earlier and to start really preparing to implement the budget itself at the department level much sooner than we normally would allow. Because last year, for example, it was approved on the 24th of June, and it took us just, even that stretch of time before July 1 to get the system loaded and updated and ready to roll. So this would be a wonderful feat in terms of getting it approved early to help us successfully implement and give people the resources they need.
It's very much appreciated. Our first year was very late in the budget cycle. Okay. Was that everything?
That's everything.
Did anybody have anything to add? Questions?
This is Michelle Lieber. I have just one.
I'm sorry, Michelle. I'm talking to the committee.
I've got some questions that Mr. Prentice, I'll follow up with you via email, but just one.
Mr. Garrett, do you mind using a microphone so the people online can hear?
With the federal funds, do they still pay for school lunches? That amount for this past year just looked really low.
So
you don't need to go into all details, but
no, that's quite okay. So school lunch is paid. Nutrition services is a separate special revenue fund as well. And so if you look in our special revenue fund, and I'll show you in the budget book when it comes out, it's about $38 to $40 million special revenue fund. A significant portion of those revenues are derived from the free and reduced lunch program. And then I think about $5 or $6 million of that total comes from direct pay from students and families.
And just with the insurance, I was just curious to check sort of the total amount versus our square footage, just to see, just out of curiosity, what sort of per square foot we're paying on the insurance. And I know that's a longer, I can follow up with you later on that one.
I can get you a round number as we wrap up today
Okay.
on that.
And last question, what's our total fund balance now?
We are at 231 million in the GOF.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So the nutrition services comes from the free and reduced lunch program through the Department of Agriculture.
Mr. Prentice, I'm sorry. I'd like to please remind the board members that Audit and Finance is a standalone committee. We're a committee meeting that's having a business meeting. Proper protocol is for board members to observe the meeting. It's not like our regular board meetings where we dialogue. Sorry, Mr. Prentice, you can continue. I just want to remind the board members of that.
Sure. No, I was just clarifying to Mr. Garrett's question. With free and reduced lunch, Department of Agriculture provides that funding. We have students, of course, that qualify based on their own circumstances, but then we also have schools as a whole that have been qualified to receive free and reduced lunch across the board. And so all those revenues come in to fund the services of the nutrition services operation throughout the district. And there's no GOF support provided.
Mr. Garrett, did you have anything else? Moving on to items 4A, the upcoming meeting, next audit and finance meeting is Wednesday, May 7th, 8 a.m. And with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.